Hello and welcome to the Last Word on Spurs. We hope you're keeping very, very safe and well. Thank you so much for joining us for yet another midweek edition of the Last Word on Spurs, where this is what happens, as I always say, when you're out of all the cups, you just get the one game a week where Spurs don't threaten to derail your weekend too much. But hopefully look forward to giving Conte some good preparation with the lads ahead of hopefully a big week in store for Tottenham. A big game to come against Newcastle, of course, at the weekend. We'll be looking at that. We'll also be touching upon, of course, a roundup of our international players that have been on duty. We'll see how they're getting on. And, of course, also touching upon Fabio Paratich's interview. I must say, if you're listening to the show for the first time, you can find us on iTunes or on Spotify or on Audio Boom. We're across a range of different audio platforms. We're, of course, on Twitter at Last Word on Spurs. We're on Facebook and Instagram too. And we're also, of course, live on YouTube. Thank you so much for joining us, as I've said, on this midweek special. Joining me, I've got 3 returning guests, a couple of regulars as well with us. To my top right, I've got a man that is committed to giving us the latest news on our youth, who put out a great pod earlier today. We've got the brilliant John Wenham. Over at Lilywhite Rose. John, been far too long. How are you? Lovely to have you back.
Yeah, Rick, how you doing, mate? Great show to come back on. Obviously, loads of our youth involved last night. Lots of impressive goals, lots of people pushing on the door of the first team. So really looking forward to getting into it tonight. And we've got a great panel. So, yeah.
Oh, man. Yeah, looking forward to it. Plenty of good news on the youth. So talk about time. And it's been good that we're getting you on at this point, which has been great. Also joining John tonight, please have him back on the show, of course. You know where to find all your pre-match build up now, of course, over at the Daily Hotspur, as Jason is already pleading, please no transfers. Jay, we'll try and keep it for you, transfer free. We've got the brilliant Jamie Brown from the Daily Hotspur joining us. Jay, how are you?
Yeah, I'm all good, thank you, Ricky. As John said there, actually a really good international break for a lot of the Spurs players. Lots of guys in the first team putting in some impressive performances, which, hopefully they'll come back. We're full of confidence. Even the likes of Stephen Bergvine really impressing. So even the squad players now that hopefully can kick on and really help us in this challenge for the top 4. But I think the big thing is no injuries have come away. I think that's something that, we can't take for granted at Spurs. Something that always seems to happen during the international break. We've got no injuries, so that's all good. A really positive international break. Of course, Kane being fantastic as well. But it's a weird one because I'd say that I'm missing Spurs, to be honest, at the moment. It's not something that kind of we've said too many times over the last couple of years. But I mean, look, we're playing some really nice football. We're right in the hunt for the top 4. Lots to play for in the rest of the season. So I'm looking forward to discussing Spurs tonight.
Absolutely. That's what happens. Like I say, we don't play midweek. There's actually joy about talking about Tottenham, which says a lot based on some of our midweek games, which one man will know all about. He was with us early in the season for a game under Nuno Espirito Santo's era. We're pleased to say we have found him. We have brought him back from the wilderness because it's fair to say a lot of people try to go missing during that period. We've got the brilliant producer, remixer, DJ, Roska's back with us on the Last Word on Spurs. Roska, how are you? Lovely to have you back on.
Yes. Thanks, Rick. Yes, and it's good to be back. Good to be back, returning as well. I think this is like my 3rd show now. So yeah, good to be back. And yeah, I echo what Jamie said about, just it's good to miss, literally be missing football during the international period. Usually this is our breather, like I think I was here during the Europa Conference League. So, during Nuno Espirito Santos period. So it kind of feels good to have that excitement again. Looking forward to Sunday and looking forward to hopefully thrashing Newcastle.
Yeah, fingers crossed. I do want to promote you and push you up to the Champions League nights, but I just can't promise you we're going to have them. But we're going to find out, of course, in these next 9 games what Spurs are capable of. Absolutely fine. No, listen, lovely to have you here. Obviously, Chris Callan was meant to be joining us. Unfortunately for Chris, work stopped him in his tracks. We're hoping to have Chris back on the show in the very near future. Now, I think we'll start with an international roundup because it's funny, although Spurs haven't played this week, it's been a crazy amount of Spurs news, both, of course, on the youth side, which we're going to touch upon with John in greater detail. But firstly, to turn our attention to the Tuesday night where Harry Kane moved level with the great Sir Bobby Charlton on 49 goals for England after his penalty secured a 2-1 friendly win against Switzerland at Wembley. And my apologies, I said Tuesday, it was Saturday evening, bearing in mind. It feels like it's been a long week. And there you go, even adds to that. So, now for Kane, he has 49 goals from 68 caps. He's just 5 goals away from becoming England's all-time record goal scorer, with Wayne Rooney currently topping that list on 53. John, to start with you, do you think Kane is getting the recognition he deserves from country? I mean, again, there was today, we saw obviously a lot of statements coming out. One from Kane about the booing towards Harry Maguire. taking that aside from a second, we'll come on to that in a sec. But Harry Kane, is he finally getting the praise he deserves for closing in on that record now?
I feel like he's always got praise from the top level managers. I feel like, Gareth Southgate has picked him whenever he can and makes that point. I feel like he's always picked by Antonio Conte. He's always picked by Jose Mourinho. He's always picked by Mauricio Pochettino. It's people of other clubs with a loud voice on social media who have a displeasure towards somebody playing for Tottenham and doing well and kind of trying to damn that down in some way. If anything, the achievements he has for both England and for Tottenham are greater than if he went off to Manchester City and did that where he was constantly provided maybe more opportunities in a team that dominates the game more. So I think, Kane is kind of a target, an unfair target from people in the media maybe that want to get likes and retweets under their comments and posts, and also fans of other clubs that try and single him out in an unfair way. Kane is an unbelievable forward. You've only got to look, I think it was this week whereby Mark Gay made his debut with the England squad, and he very quickly came out and said, look, the level of players is all top table, but Kane in particular, it feels like every shot he has goes in. Whenever you hear of new players joining the group with England, they straight away point this out. Luke Shaw this week also mentioned that Kane is probably the best out and out forward in world football at the moment. Players don't say that for nothing, Players say that because Kane has led England well in the last World Cup, in the last Euros. England have got to a semi and a World Cup final for the first time in a number of years. And, they're going to this tournament in Qatar next time round as one of the firm favourites to win that competition. And that's based on their previous last two tournaments. And Kane is the spearhead and the leader of that squad. So I think, obviously he deserves all the praise that he gets, and Tottenham fans do give him that. And I think high-level managers give him that, and high-level pundits give him that. But he's also an easy target for people twerking for likes off Arsenal and Chelsea fans and that kind of thing, which is a shame. But look, we give him the credit. He knows the managers give him the credit, and that's what he cares about.
Absolutely, yeah. Just to reply to Jan there on the screen, who says Roska looks like Ndombele. It's Ndombele and Bentancur live on Last Word on Spurs. Just to reassure everybody, we're hoping Ross can do more than the 60 minutes that Ndombele did provide us with in a Spurs shirt. Although Jason, I know in the comments, will be absolutely rattled by that. Will come back to us, I'm sure, in the next couple of minutes. Jay, coming around to you to steer the show to you. On Harry Kane, there'll be that argument that, Spurs fans, we don't really want to see him involved in friendlies because, again, there's such a reliance upon Kane. But do you have to just accept, Jay, you said it before, for him, it is simply country over club. There's that real desire for Kane to get that all-time leading goal-scoring record. So we just got to accept, Jamie, that he's going to want to be involved for country always?
There's obviously lots of incentives for him on a personal note. And I think that international, or like the likes of Harry Kane, they're always going to prioritise their national team over club, whoever they play for, whoever they think, whether they play for Real Madrid or, all the big players, they want to be firing for their countries. The same will be said of Romero going, perhaps wasting a trip to South America. But it's a World Cup year. He wants to be in that squad. He wants to be made sure he's ready for those matches. And it's the same with Harry Kane. He's the captain. And then, of course, for Gareth Southgate as well, he wants to win these matches. He needs to impress. So he's going to have to use his best players. And Harry Kane is one of his best players, absolutely. I think it was a really interesting moment. Of course, the clip that's going around on social media at the moment of Antoine Griezmann scoring in training and pretending he's Harry Kane. I think that just says everything about how he's kind of seen by his fellow professionals. He is one of the very best in the world. His goal scoring record for England just speaks for itself. I mean, a lot of people will kind of say, "Oh, look, Rooney, Harry Kane's kind of stat padding against the likes of San Marino, getting all these goals." But Harry Kane, he's nearly scored the same amount of goals as Wayne Rooney in nearly half the games. His goal scoring record is just unbelievable. He's got 49 goals in 69 appearances for England, which is just unbelievable. Rooney had 120 appearances, so he is probably he is the best goal scorer England's ever had since Jimmy Greaves. He's for me, he's definitely the best number 9 in the world right now. And it's just fantastic that he's a player for Tottenham Hotspur.
Ross, coming around to you. I mean, he played just under half an hour at the end of England's 3-0 home win against Ivory Coast, for whom we got, probably mentioned as well, we saw Serge Aurier doing Serge Aurier things. But before we discuss that moment, just on Kane for you, Ross, do you have a problem with him appearing in these games, or do you just accept it that the nature of Kane, the determination and hunger to get that record, he's going to want to appear every time possible for England, right?
Yeah, I guess, he really enjoys playing for England, so he's always going to try and get as much game time as he can. I'm just glad that he only got half an hour in the last game, and then he can rest, get back with the rest of the squad, and then just start learning, getting involved for Newcastle. That's all I care about. I don't like the game, the friendlies. They're not really necessary, but I know he's going to want to go with the team and get involved. So, that's Kane.
Absolutely is. Do you have a view, Ross? Sticking with you because I did kind of bring it up towards you. Serge Aurier, is that
Serge
again a
Aurier.
reminder of why we let him go?
Do you know what? When I saw, because I got football with one of the football apps on my phone, and the sort of notification come up, and I wasn't even shocked that it was Serge getting sent off. I saw sent off, knew it was Serge. Literally, he does Serge things. That's all he does. So funny though.
It's funny because, I mean, John, coming over to you, I've seen some comments this season saying that if Serge was still at the club, he'd probably still be our best right back. Do you be amused when you see comments like that, John?
Yes and no, if I'm being totally honest with you, because Serge Aurier did play for us during a period when we were in the Champions League. I remember him having some good games against the likes of Dortmund. He did okay in some other, big European games. But so I was happy when the club made the decision to move him on. I did get frustrated with the needless penalties being given away. I did get frustrated with being turned inside out on multiple occasions. But obviously, look, our signings since haven't done anything to better him. Emerson Royal has come in, and he's probably been the one signing that I'd really question for a decent sum of money. Hasn't really settled in yet, and we haven't seen him perform like the level of some of our other signings. And obviously, Matt Doherty, although he's had a bit of renaissance at the moment, is generally quite limited, in my opinion. And we saw that when he went to Old Trafford. Suddenly, it wasn't an Everton or Leeds. It was up against players of the top level, like you'd expect if we do get in the Champions League next year, and he was kind of found out. The one I look back on more than Serge Aurier even is Kyle Walker-Peters, and I do wonder if we developed him and instead loaned him out again, or loaned him out earlier, and he wasn't part of Pochettino's train but don't play policy, we might have seen a better Kyle Walker-Peters for Tottenham, and a Kyle Walker-Peters that was ready to express himself more on the pitch.
Interesting. I can see Jamie shaking his head at Jason's opinion there. Jason says on the screen, I only think Lewandowski's a better number 9 than Kane, but Kane a better all-round player.
Yeah, see, the thing with this comment, I do get it. I think Lewandowski is an unbelievable player. But the thing is, I think Harry Kane, you put him in a better team, I think he'd be scoring more goals than Lewandowski would. I think as well, he's in the Bundesliga. I mean, look, no disrespect to the Bundesliga, but the Premier League is far superior. It's far harder to score goals in the Premier League. And, Kane's almost matching Lewandowski's level. I think Lewandowski is unbelievable. But if you put Harry Kane in that Bayern Munich side, or you put him in the Bundesliga, I think he'd be outscoring them. So for me, I think Harry Kane, I think he does it exactly that. I think he does it in the best league in the world. And I think he's playing in a relatively poor team, or certainly in comparison to the Bayern Munich team. So I think if you were to put Harry Kane in one of those teams, he'd be, it would be quite scary, to be honest.
Talk about scary, talk about a player that's on really good form. Jay, to stick with you, is Steven Bergvine, who for him, he made it 4 goals in his last 3 appearances for Holland as he scored against Germany. Netherlands came from obviously a goal down to draw 1-0 in that friendly in Amsterdam. He arrived onto the ball in the box and blasted it into the corner just 10 minutes after coming on as a 58-minute sub. I mean, Jamie, have you been really impressed with Bergvine on international duty? He's playing really well for Holland, isn't he?
I mean, to be fair to him, I've always kind of seen, when he's come off the bench, I think he's actually looked quite, some of the flashes that he's come out with have been really quite promising. He seems to come off the bench, injects a lot of energy into the team, maybe coming on for a Son or a Kulusevski. He does seem to be a good option off the bench. I think the interesting thing is with Steven Bergvine, although maybe he's not a player that you'd necessarily want to discard in the summer, he's going to be a guy that's going to command you, it's going to get you big money. And I think, and that's going to be the difficult situation that Spurs are going to have to face. Do they lose a potentially good squad option, but do they get good money for him and then go and reinvest it in an area in the team that maybe benefit us more? Like, you've got £40 million extra or £35 million, however much you get for Steven Bergvine to go and spend on a new right wing back. So it's going to be interesting to kind of see how they handle that situation with Bergvine. I think he's a brilliant squad player. I'm not quite sure he's good enough to get into the starting 11 at the moment. I think that front three is surely settled at the moment. But I'd like to see him utilised in the run-in. I think that he's a guy who can definitely offer us something. I'd like to see him maybe Conte being a bit braver and bringing off one of the front three when they're not performing. But I think Bergvine's probably earned his opportunity to get more minutes off the bench. But I still don't think he's, I just think that front three is too good, basically. I just think it's testament to how good that front three is now. I don't think that Bergvine, it's difficult to say. I mean, I don't think he's a bad player, or I think he's a very good player, but I just don't think he gets ahead of any of those front three at the moment.
It's really interesting, Ross, coming over to you because, again, listen, he was also on target for the Netherlands on Saturday, indeed striking twice. He got the first and last goals on the 16th and 71st minute as the Dutch beat Denmark 4-2 in Amsterdam. But after the game, I think subsequently on the Wednesday, he was quizzed about, being able to potentially earn more minutes and what the future holds from at Spurs. He said, "I wouldn't know. We'll see. Everyone wants to play. I want to keep my head up and work hard in training, and we'll see what happens in the summer." Have you been surprised, Ross, based on the fact that, listen, Spurs made a real ploy to try and keep him in January? What we understand, Conte wanted him to stay, and there's been such a lack of game time. Is that just down to Conte now finding his preferred team and we're only now playing once a week?
Yeah, you can tell. I mean, with Conte's squads, the last 3 to 4 games, we've had a consistent lineup. You can predict the lineup literally, on the day and know you pretty much get it right. And it's been like that, and it's been really good having Bentancur, Kulusevski in the team as well. They've been really, really strong. So it's a lot of competition, and it's something that we've lacked in with our squad anyway. Competition. I felt like over the last couple of seasons, even like the run up to the end of Poch's era, it's like I felt the players felt they were guaranteed their spots. There was no one really giving them a run in for their spots, you see. So, and I feel like, we've spoke about it many times about, Kane having a backup or someone, that could possibly give him a run for his money as well. And I feel like you need that within the squad. So if he wants in the squad, then he's got to play better as well. He's doing really well for Netherlands, and he's got to do that for us as well.
Are you surprised, John, for you, the lack of game time since that January window's been shut? Because he seemed to play that Spurs were really intent on keeping. He seemed to play that Conte liked. I think he said on more than one occasion that he would like to give him the opportunity to play more, but it's been down to injury previous to the window shutting, the reason why he wasn't getting the game time. What do you reckon the future holds for him, John?
It's a really interesting one because the situation actually really reminds me of when we had Mido. Now, if you remember, there was a game we played Arsenal away in a Carabao Cup second leg semi-final. Yeah. Mido was set to join Man City that night. It was the end of the window, and he actually scored the goal that forced
came on the bench. Yeah, he came on the bench.
And then suddenly, it was our first goal at the Emirates. Actually, Mido got, and suddenly he wasn't going. That was it. He scored this goal. Although we actually lost the tie, he scored this goal, and he was going to kind of integrate him again. And I feel like what happened with Bergvine, those goals at Leicester, was the exact same thing. It was toppled with the fact that he got those goals at Leicester, and Kulusevski didn't sign until the last day of the window. We didn't know how he would thus settle thereafter. We couldn't take the risk of moving him on, but if you read the reports and very, highly respected newspaper columnists from Holland made the point clear that Ajax really wanted Bergwijn. There was only a couple of million in it. And I think that compromise would have been met if we obviously hadn't have had that moment at Leicester. And, we didn't know how well Kulusevski was going to settle. So I certainly think knowing that Tottenham have got to pay the money for Kulusevski this summer, if they choose to do so, which I think is 30 million euros, or it's 35 million if they let the loan run until 2023, I think they will look to sell Bergwijn basically just to buy Kulusevski. I think Ajax is going to lose a whole host of players this summer. I put a tweet out the other day, I think 7 or 8 players. It's a daily basis. You see this player linked to go in and this player's contract's up. I think Ajax is going to have some serious money. They had a decent Champions League run as well. And I think for Bergwijn himself, he's scoring regularly for the Netherlands. He needs to be the confidence player, I think, certainly Bergwijn. And when he's on confidence and he's on form, he's a very, very good player. No mistakes about that. But I feel like he needs to be the main man somewhere. He can't be a bit part player. He can't be, you're behind Kane, you're behind Son. I think he needs to come out of his own shell and be a Son or a Kane for somebody else. And I think Ajax certainly could do that. Back in the Netherlands, I personally think he's a little bit too good actually for a, not a top 5 league. I wouldn't call the only league a
agree.
League. I think he's too good for that. But I look at Prem teams. Couldn't a Southampton, couldn't a Newcastle, couldn't one of these side of clubs come in and make Bergwijn their main man? I can't really see why not. I think he's proven himself with the Netherlands. He's scoring in big games against the likes of Germany. He scored the goal that sent Holland to the World Cup. I think he's a big player, Bergwijn, and he's just unlucky at Tottenham that obviously he's behind top world-class elite players like Kane and Son.
Yeah, it's weird. It's one of the most strongest areas we've got in our squad. Jay, coming over to you, I know you wanted to come in there. Go for it.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing with Bergvine as well, we think kind of the noise that's coming out of him at the moment, it does feel as though maybe he will push for that move. Of course, we saw that leaked Snapchat of him kind of saying that he feels like he's not being used properly at Spurs. I think he did an interview after the match saying, we'll wait and see in the summer what will happen, and kind of, wants to be playing more. So I think all the noise is coming out of him. Sounds like he's kind of anticipating to leave. But as I said, it's just going to be, I think it's an interesting one because although he looks like he's going to become a really useful player for Spurs, I actually think that you know, the way Spurs ultimately we run, we know what, you know, we have to kind of sell players to bring new ones in. Unfortunately, that's the way it is at Spurs. It's not ideal. We want to have a strong squad. We want to have, you know, Bergvine as being a backup option. But I think ultimately, you know, if you can get £40 million for him, you're not going to sell other players in that squad who just aren't worth anything. If you can get £40 million and then go and reinvest that in a top crucial position for the starting 11, then that's probably a good thing for Spurs. And I think that kind of this form is going to be really promising if we want to go and rebuild this squad.
Yeah, I mean, you do feel there's probably in those wide areas, the likes of Mora and Bergvine are going to be two opportunities where Spurs can maybe raise some cash.
Ricky, we've also got 30 million Brian Hills to come back next summer.
And
to be assessed and looked at, you know.
Yeah.
So we've got a whole, as you said, birth of options there.
I agree with you. I mean, it'd be interesting, I'd say, when the summer does come, because obviously Mora, for example, Mora's found himself that's been pushed out the side, obviously, since Kulusevski's been here. I mean, Ross, do you feel in a way, because, like John says there, Hills to come back as well, Spurs may have some opportunities there in the summer to try and raise some cash in order to inject it into other areas of the squad? We know that really wing-back Spurs need to try and probably find the right balance for there. I mean, left-sided centre-back, again, that's always been an area they're going to look at. You'd imagine Galini's loan is going to come to an end. So again, second goalkeeper there, and maybe again an opportunity to have an alternative to Kane. Although we'll come on to Scarlett's forms, that's been really promising. Do you feel overall, Ross, we got an opportunity there in the summer?
Yeah, I definitely think so. I think, you know, if we're going to shape the team around what we've got already set up, and we want to strengthen those areas that you mentioned, we're going to need to sell some players, some quality players that aren't really fitting in the team. Same for who else we got? We've got Bergwine. We've also got Mora as well. That possibly could make a move as well, because how old is he now? He should be sort of like pushing on to another team. I think he's not going to get regular game time now. And both of those teams. I think someone mentioned it in the comments as well about Bergwine. He's played like 76 games and only scored like 6 or 7 goals. It's like it's not really good enough for what we need.
Yeah. I will say, just to caveat a little bit, is obviously a lot of those games come under Mourinho, where effectively Bergvine was a bit of an inverted wing back. And again, I wonder just now with Bergvine, you're seeing that confidence in him. Maybe he's, like I say, playing for that move. But I mean, to our players that are playing, our academy, John. Obviously, we heard you on your pod earlier today. And if anyone hasn't listened to that, please go and check that out. Of course, at Lilywhite_Rose. The youth at the moment, John, really are shining for Tottenham. It's a real promise ahead of us, because again, we saw 21 of Spurs' players, faced with a lot of countries, games to play. And in the early hours of the morning, we saw a development squad player. You're going to name a lot more than me. Callum Cisse grabbing the headlines with 2 goals on his debut for Sierra Leone side as they saw off Congo Brazzaville 2-1 in Turkey. John, tell us a little bit about this player. One that we should keep an eye on right now, or is it more one for the future?
Yeah, it's an interesting one with Callum. Obviously, before this summer, he was really a kind of backup right back in the academy. He wasn't even a starting right back for the under-18s in his year coming through. Then this summer, Nuno came in. And Nuno, you can take a like to him in pre-season. If you remember, he started the pre-season game against Leyton Orient. He was then involved in the second game up against Colchester, I believe. Nuno took a like to him and his coaching staff and kind of involved him with the first team. He also had a growth spurt over the summer, so he's quite a big unit of a guy now. And he's developed really nicely this year for Wayne Burnett's under-23s. He's played on a right back, played at left back in the game. I've also seen him play in a midfield role. He's certainly one that's gone under the radar in academy football. And not one of these names you hear shouted about since they're 16 or 15, before they've even playing in the under-18s. He's certainly one that's gone under the radar. And him to get that call up was really nice. He got it through his dad. Was eligible for him to get the call up, so he's gone off to Sierra Leone and part of their squad, and obviously got those 2 goals in that tournament in Turkey. And that's a huge credit to him. Hopefully, he can build on that and bring that confidence back to Hotspur way. I still think it'll be sensible for him next year to go on a first loan. He's never been on loan before, so maybe a League One club to start with to establish himself. Because look, if players aren't going to make it to Tottenham, let's get back to what we were doing 5 or 10 years ago, when we were getting 8 million for Stephen Corker, 13 million for Andros Townsend.
Absolutely.
18 million for Nabil Bentaleb. We were good. What everyone praises Chelsea are doing now. We were doing that 10, 15 years ago very, very well. 5 million for Tom Carroll, 8 million for Jake Lismore. We had a great track record of doing this. We need to get back to that. And the way you get back to that is by organising successful loans. Players go out, players develop, players build their reputation, their network. And that is how you do, that system so well. So we need to get back to that. And hopefully Callum can be one of those that goes out in the summer.
Just sticking with you, John, because you just mentioned it there about loans, and one that doesn't seem to have worked out is at the moment is Niall John over at Charlton. I mean, we've seen reports today from Footy Insider that Spurs are incredibly frustrated, and I think they use the term furious that he hasn't played, well, substantially any games that he was expected to be playing for Charlton. Do you think Spurs will look to recall him, or do you think they'll look to see how that plays out for the rest of the season?
No, I think because he's based in London anyway, they'll leave that as it is. I imagine he's still staying wherever he stayed before. I think certainly they are frustrated with that situation. I've heard that as well. He went over there. Chris Powell took him down there, if you remember. Chris Powell's got very good links with Charlton. Works at our academy now. Involved in the England setup. Chris Powell as well. So Niall was in the England squad as well. That loan has been really disappointing. I understand Charlton have one too many players on loan. It's an issue with the matchday squad. Rick, if you remember, Jack Clark had the same issue when we loaned him back to Leeds, whereby they just had too many loan players and you can only name a set number in the squad. And he's often been found as the odd man out. And that's frustrating because fans will remember that pre-season, again, he was heavily involved. He got some squad time, certainly in the Europa Conference League early on the bench. So that's disappointing how this has panned out for Niall. But to be fair, it's one of only a few loans that I've been disappointed with this year. I think quite a lot of our other loans have been very successful.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to come back around here shortly, John, because, listen, there's still plenty to get our teeth into in terms of loans. Just a shout out to Phoebe there on the screen. Loving the show, guys. Missing Spurs massively in our house. Let's hope you feel the same on Sunday, Phoebe. She said, my dad, Bradley, is the under-15s academy coach at Spurs. Got him listening. Thank you, Phoebe, for that. Appreciate it. Thank you so much for that support. Jay, coming over to you. Listen, two of the players from our fellow academy graduates that took the headlines, of course, respectively, Dane Scarlett, Troy Parrott. I mean, Dane Scarlett, firstly, he scored twice in the first half of his England under-19s, won an important European under-19 championship qualifier, 2-0 against Portugal in Chesterfield. Jamie, listen, Dane Scarlett's been talked up a lot by Antonio Conte in the last few weeks. Do you think there's a chance we may see him in these closing 9 games, or do you just think because of the nature of how big those games are for Spurs, he's more of a realistic player to see potentially next season, pre-season?
Yeah, I don't think we'll see him in the final couple of matches. Obviously, clearly not ready just yet. But I'm totally with John, to be honest. I would say I want to see us going back to that, loaning players out and them having successful loans, because I think if we saw arguably one of our most successful kind of youth players over recent years, Oliver Skipp, having a fantastic loan and getting that experience in the Championship. And I think that experience of playing senior football is just kind of invaluable. I mean, it is obviously the debate. Do you keep them around the first team? They get all the experiences of being used to Hotspur way, training with the first team, kind of getting used to being around the first team. Obviously, that's a great experience. Or do you send them out to really go and experience senior football? And then, of course, if you move away to a different place, like Oliver Skipp did with Norwich, you're living by yourself, then you very quickly grow up. And so it's an interesting one, kind of, do you keep them around the first team or do you loan them out? But I think Spurs have had a lot more success when they've loaned players out. I mean, the big one for me, as I think John mentioned earlier, was Kyle Walker-Peters. I just think we kept him around the first team for too long. Obviously got great experience of being with the first team, but you just saw every time he came in, he never really seemed ready for first team football. And you feel as though maybe if he'd have gone down the league when he was when he was maybe 19 or younger and had that experience, then maybe to come back and he'd be more ready for senior football. But I think that's something that really held him back. So I would like to see these, the likes of Alfie Devine or Scarlett going out on loan. That's for me. I'd like to see us start and get back to doing that again.
Coming over to you, Ross. I mean, Dane Scarlett, I think in your appearance for the Europa Conference League, Dane may have actually got on and played a little bit. I think the only thing with Dane is, again, there was probably intense pressure on him because, as we know, Nuno started, apart from the first 3 games, as poorly as it did, it felt like those Europa Conference League games, it almost became a chance to then try and get the form back on track and then start embedding quite quickly a lot of the senior players in there. So then, obviously, Dane dropped out of the Europa Conference League lineups. Do you hold high hopes for him, Ross, that he will be involved pre-season, starting next season?
I reckon so. I mean, look, Mourinho liked him. Nuno Espirito Santos liked him as well, and also Conte likes him as well. And he's been on the bench quite a lot now, so I can't see why not. I feel like if we had the cup games early on, I reckon if we was more stable, maybe you would have got involved then as well. But he wants him to hang around, Conte. So I guess it makes sense for him to be involved in the pre-season, and let's see how he gets on, because he's doing really well for the under-19s.
He is, absolutely is. What we will do, we will go for our first break of the show for our listeners that are on audio. Take you into this break, you're going to hear from a very, very happy Brandon Austin, who's just signed a new deal, and we'll be talking about him in this next segment of the show. Sticking with some of the players that have really shone during this international break, takes me very nicely, John, back round to you, to Troy Parrott. But I thought it's only right, John, I quickly ask your opinion on Dane Scarlett because of, I say, you focusing on the youth. John, do you have a view on just how much Dane is progressing?
I think he's progressing really, really nicely. I mean, I've seen a few comments, and I've seen one I'm looking at now. He's been pony so far. I think that's only fair. I want to address that if I may. He was playing as a 17-year-old, in these Europa Conference League games. It's a big ask to come into a mixed match team. We've seen, our players, rotation players, they're like 25, 26-year-olds struggle in those teams. And now you're expecting a 17-year-old to feed off scraps away in Europe. It's not an easy task, but I still think that's a good experience for him. I still think going as part of a squad, travelling, I think that all bodes into his experience. I think ideally for me next year, Dane, I would like him to go out on loan. I want him to go to League One for a full season. I'd like him to go literally 1st of July when the window opens. So he's got a full pre-season to embed himself, learn the manager's tactics, and then he takes everything. I want him as the leading man for a team. I think he's ready for that. I've seen him in under-23s games, bury goals past the likes of Peter Cech, and big experienced players. I've seen him do very well at that level. I've got no fear that he just needs the right surroundings and he will thrive. And he's only going to get better the more opportunities he gets.
John, would you say when he comes into the Europa League squad and maybe plays the one-off match, and we obviously had that really poor game against Vitesse, do you think that's maybe a slightly damaging experience when he's coming in and he's not doing so well? Or do you think that is just any experience is good?
Not for me personally, and not from what I've heard from the player. Or I've actually had the pleasure of talking to his dad a few times at Hotspur Way, actually, and they didn't get that impression whatsoever. The impression from them was, what an opportunity to go away, to sit next to, if Harry Kane's go amongst the subs, to talk to him at half time in the game, to talk through movements, positioning, finishing opportunities. That's all experience. I just think that, that's invaluable if you ask me. It's a bit like the loans. People always say, Harry Kane had some bad loans, but Harry Kane had lots of loans. He had some at Norwich and Leicester that weren't successful, but he went to Millwall and netted 8 goals as they survived. That toughens you up. Trust me.
It shapes you into the player you are, right? It shapes you into the player you are. Yeah,
absolutely. And even Ryan Mason had a loan at Lorient in France where he didn't actually kick a ball for him. He says that was a good experience in terms of seeing something a bit different, learning different styles. So loans are different for players and they learn different skills and things from them. But I certainly think Dane's time playing in Vitesse and playing it was an intimidating atmosphere over there, will stand him in good stead. And the fact that when he goes and plays with England at under 19, despite only turning 18 last week, he leads the line for them. He scores goals. So it shows you that amongst players his own peer group, he's dominating. He absolutely is. In the under 23s, he's doing very well. So it's just a matter of time with him. And I think people expect so much from him so soon, despite his tender age. You just got to give him time to blossom. That's why I said a League One loan next year. Get 45 games under your belt. Year after, get another 45 games in the Championship. You're then talking about a kid that's got 100 games under his belt at the age of 19, 20, ready to come into the first team at that point.
Yeah.
Another thing I hear a lot as well is obviously everyone kind of brings it back to Wayne Rooney and him, banging at 18 or doing so well at such a young age. But I think a good example, I think Rooney, his kind of career was shortened because he was starting at such a young age as well. And I think Rashford's having a similar thing at the moment where he started, I think it was 18, he was kind of in the first team, and then he started becoming really reliant on him at 19. So I think a lot of people want these players, just because they've seen Rashford doing well at 19 or 18, seen Rooney doing at 18. But obviously you look at their careers, some of them, they've kind of been shortened because they started so young and so much pressure so early. So I think a lot of people obviously saying, that Scarlett's not doing so well now. I think that, I'd rather he came through at maybe the age of 20 or 21 when, he's kind of at an age where he can handle that pressure now. And, he's not going to have so much overload in his body at such a young age. Because, as I said, I think with a player like Rashford, at such a young age, he had so much to put on him.
Yeah.
And I kind of see that's why we're seeing the struggles that he's having now, because Manchester United kept putting him in the team at a young age, and just kind of his body, I think, has taken a bit of a hit from being reliant upon at such a young age.
Yeah. Paddy, listen, long-term listener, Always love his graphics that he does after the game with crackers on countdown. Paddy asks, this is to you. We'll go back to John on this, and we'll go to Ross next. He asked a question for John. Out of Parrott and Scarlett, I'll change this slightly. Who do you think, John, out of those two have more of a longer-term future at the club? I was going to put you on the spot because we're going to come on to Parrott in a second. Who do you reckon out of those two?
I could actually throw two more in as well. And Keon Etete, who's doing really well this year, and Jamie Donnelly is a young England under-17 striker. But out of just those two, I think we've got a crop of really good strikers. I think at least two will come through from those four. But out of those two, I'm going to go with Dane Scarlett at the moment. I think away from football, he's got a really good setup. His dad really takes care of him, makes sure he's at training all the time. He's got a very, very good setup behind him, Dane Scarlett. I'm a little bit worried with Troy Parrott about some of the friends he keeps away from football. And I think that might be his downfall rather than his ability on the pitch.
Okay, interesting. John, thank you so much for that. Ross, let's come around to you. Listen, another player, as we kind of touched upon there, that's done really well on this international duty has been Troy Parrott. I mean, Troy netted a stunning 97th minute goal, a winner from outside the box to give the Republic of Ireland a crucial home 1-0 victory. Well, I say crucial, it was a friendly, but again, good for confidence, a 1-0 win. Look, it meant the world to him. Ross, what did you make of that? Because he really did take the game with the scruff of the neck there, and it was a wonderful strike from Troy Parrott, wasn't it?
Yeah, he's got a lot to prove. You know, I've heard somebody. Well, there was an interview where he done, and he said that he wants to fight for his space at Spurs. So for him, he's got a lot to prove. He's got and the only way he can do that by getting staying in the international squad and then playing where he's playing as well, and continuing to do that. But it's going to be hard for him. It's going to be hard. It's been hard for him so far, and I guess it can only get better for him if he continues and just keeps that consistency going.
Absolutely. I totally agree on that. Jamie, to come around to you, Troy Parrott, I think we were all quite optimistic about what the future was holding for him. Of course, he came in the team in a brief period under Jose. I think Jose said to us then, that's why you can see why Troy isn't ready. And I think we all thought, have we almost burnt the kid's confidence before he even started here? But he's gone back on loan. I know it hasn't been the most productive loan so far up at MK Dons. I mean, John's probably more qualified to speak about it than I am. But, great goal for him, great confidence for his country, right, that finish?
Yeah, I mean, look, he's obviously, as I said, he's getting that experience of playing first-team football. I think here he's got 5 goals, I think, and 5 assists as well in 34 games. So I think it's okay. I mean, look, he had so much pressure put on him. I think it was very unfair how much pressure he had on him. I think, we'd all seen Harry Kane just come through. Amazing, and then that expectation is incredibly high. So I do definitely feel sorry for Troy Parrott, and again, he's 18 years old, he was 18 years old, and he had all this praise coming on him of, he's going to be the next Harry Kane, and I think that's just very difficult for him to deal with it. Look, players develop at different rates. They'll have that period where they're amazing young talent, and then maybe they'll kind of drift off a little bit, but then they can all of a sudden explode again. I think it was similar with Jack Grealish. I think he burst onto the scene as this unbelievable young talent, and then he kind of faded away a little bit, and now all of a sudden he had that then he kind of really exploded. So look, players just develop at different rates. They go through kind of different stages of maybe they drift away a bit, but then they can equally come back. So it'll be interesting to see how he gets on. But as I said, I really felt very sorry for him in terms of all the pressure that got put on him at such a young age. But yeah, I mean, he seems to be doing okay at MK. As I said, John's probably more qualified. He's definitely more qualified to speak on it than I am. But he seems to be doing okay there. So yeah, I think it was really great to see him score that goal last night as well. So that was fantastic.
Yeah, just before we finally move on from Parrott, John, coming back round to you. What have you made that loan spell for him up at MK Dons? Has it been anything that he flourished and wanted, or has it been tricky? It feels like it's been tricky just from a distance. It hasn't been as many goals as obviously he would have liked and probably what we would have liked as a club, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's fair to say. I think the goals haven't been, and he's the first one to admit that. He comes out and says, I wish I was scoring more and I wish I was involved in more goal scoring opportunities. But a point to mention is the MK, when he did finally score a couple of weeks ago and he got 2, the response from the MK Don fans underneath their official club's tweet was they were all so happy for him. They said there wasn't anyone they'd rather scored than him. He works his arse off, basically. He's a runner. He don't stop giving it his all for the 90 minutes. He battles, he wins the ball, he's competitive. And he's got, a lot of kind of pre-assists this season, I think it's fair to say, where he's laid on the player who's then assisted for the goal. So they really like him down at MK. I wouldn't be adverse to him doing another year there next year. Now that he started getting his shooting boots together towards the back end of the season, and then building on that confidence and continuity of playing at the same club again, I really wouldn't be against that. I think that's good for his development. He's still very, very young. And he did have a lot of hype on him, and quite rightly so, if I'm being honest with you. I watched him score outstanding youth goals against Inter Milan, against Barcelona at that level. When we were in the Youth Champions League, he was really a dominant forward at that level. And quite rightly, he was very highly regarded. Obviously, he had a disappointing loan first time out at Millwall. But then again, I see that as a good experience. I think you probably learn a lot from playing with senior Republic of Ireland internationals in that Millwall squad. And playing in front of a difficult audience at Ben, I reckon he did learn from that. Then he went to Ipswich, and now he's at MK Dons. So, yeah, hopefully, I've seen a comment from Paddy again, who says, from what I'm told in the know from lads in Dublin, Parrott has really changed his ways off the pitch now. That is the one thing for me that would hold him back. So if he has done that, and his maturity in his interviews yesterday kind of pointed to that as well, he's got the ability to go very, very far, because there's a lot of talent in the boy.
Just a couple of other names that come up, John. Just Harvey White and Keon Atete. You spoke about Keon earlier, but Harvey White, another player we should maybe look out for, maybe over pre-season.
Yeah, he's certainly liked by Antonio Conte. I think the decision was made that there were options for him to go on loan at the very end of the January transfer window, and kind of moves even agreed. But because Tottenham had that unexpected opportunity of moving on all of Ndombele, Lo Celso, and Hangyon Ndombele, it was seen that he's the most prepared to come in if we had an injury crisis or anything like that. Harvey White is a brilliant player. He can play in multiple positions. I've seen him play anywhere from left back, centre back to a holding midfield role. Unbelievable set piece taker, something we desperately need in the team. So I would like Harvey to be given an opportunity pre-season to impress. And if he isn't going to be involved in the first team, a loan to the Championship straight away.
Brilliant, fantastic. Just another brief roundup. Obviously, Dejan Kulusevski, we saw him clash heads with David Zima in Sweden. I think we all held our breath for a second. That was against Czech Republic on Thursday, which left him a really bad swollen cheek, but thankfully he recovered okay. Unfortunately for him, he will not be heading to the World Cup. Disappointment for him, but there is joy for on loan star. To be fair, it hasn't gone quite well for him since he signed for Spurs. Take of it what you will, Pape Matar. His form seems to have fallen off a cliff since he signed for Spurs. So let's hope there's a lot more optimism ahead when he does join us. But some would say that's the nature of signing for our football club. But we'll wait and see. Earlier during that day, we did also see Heung-min Son play 90 minutes for an already qualified South Korea as they lost 1-0 away to the UAE. Elsewhere, just brief mentions, Maxim Patowski was an unused sub for Estonia as they lost 2-0 away to Cyprus in their UEFA Nations League relegation playoff. Meanwhile, Brian Hill did score the first goal in their 3-2 Euro qualifying victory away to Slovakia. He was in a sub in the 82nd minute. It's been fair to say it has been a really, really busy international period in which we've also seen, coming over to you, Ross, originally Romero being called up by Argentina, but it really ended up becoming a bit of a waste of a journey for him. He went over there, but they couldn't overturn the ban, which meant subsequently he came back to Spurs. I mean, obviously, the good news is that it hasn't been an issue where he's been stuck over there. From what we understood, he come back to Spurs on Tuesday. But again, just a situation we just didn't really need to get ourselves into, and Argentina seeming to hold the cards over us on this one, Ross.
Yeah, it's a bit weird because they didn't announce that he was part of the squad. No, I didn't see anything saying that he was part of the squad initially.
Was it? I mean, boys, you can maybe help me. This was a late call up, right?
So he had the 2-match ban for when he, I think, because of when he broke the COVID rules for the Argentina versus Brazil match. Right. I think he was handed a 2-match ban, so he wasn't actually allowed to be in the squad. He travelled over there, I think, in the hope that the 2-match ban would become one. And obviously that FIFA decided to stick with the 2-match ban, and he missed both games. So
it depends how you look at that, Roskin. Yeah, go for it.
Were they friendlies?
Yeah, I think these were
both friendlies.
No. They were qualified. I think they were qualifiers, weren't they?
Might have to, so they were both. From what they both were qualifiers. From what I can see here.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, again, it's interesting because with Romero, I mean, Adrian says on the screen they got to see his family. Again, of course, that's a plus for him. But you do feel, with Conte, loves to work with the players on the training ground. You maybe feel it's a bit of a missed opportunity. But then having said that, I suppose had so many players away anyway. I mean, the difference really, does it make a massive difference? I mean, John, do you have a view on that? Romero, the way that was called up, then he's not playing.
I find that really frustrating, if I'm being honest with you. For all the great things I've said about Romero this season, I think he's brilliant. I find the fact that we've already had some incidents where he went off and he had to train on that island in Croatia or whatever that was, to have this incident arise again when he's just in a good run of form now and settled a partnership with Dyer as part of an important back three for us. He just had a kid as well. He could have really used his 2 weeks to spend in London in terms of settling into the culture of being around Hotspur Way and the surrounding areas instead of going back to Argentina. I found it quite frustrating, if I'm being honest with you, and I'm sure the club did too.
I would say, sorry, I just found that one. I personally understand it. I think, as I mentioned earlier in the start of the show, from a kind of a selfish point of view, you can understand why he's done it. It's a World Cup year. I think Argentina are a side who could quite easily win the World Cup. He's going to want to kind of really make an impression on the coach there. And I think the thing is, I think Romero has kind of been dubbed as this hero from Argentina because they haven't really had a central defender as good as him for a very long time. So, maybe he's got a lot of credit in the bank. Of course, he played an integral part in winning the Copa America as well. So maybe he doesn't really need to make that trip and kind of make that impression. But I still feel I can totally understand why he's done it. I think, every player's going to want to be a country or a club, and I can kind of understand it.
You know what is interesting? When you flip the coin the other way, we saw Wales manager Rob Page come out and say on Ben Davies returning to Spurs precautionary that he's had a lot of football in his legs. It's not so much an injury, but a precaution with regards to Ben. I think we owe it to Tottenham. They've been great with us. It's time to show that respect back. Now, obviously, Ben is coming with a slight tightness, what we understand, to one of the quad muscles in his thigh. But when you see that, Ross, for example, Wales almost, understanding Spurs' predicament. They seem to have a good relationship there with the medical staff. It's a shame they've got that with Wales, but they just seem to don't have that with Argentina's medical staff, right?
Yeah, I feel like it's one of those things where you've got the national team. Everybody wants the best squad, so it's like you're stretched. And I feel like Wales manager coming out and saying he wants to send Davis back, precautionary reasons. It's good to see that they appreciate that we're also making a sacrifice as well as the national team. So, it works both ways, and we need to see more of that, really.
I thought it was interesting, John, come over to you, the humility there of the manager of Wales. I think it was a really nice comment to say that, they feel like they owe Tottenham. There's obviously a good relationship there. Ben's been with us, 6-7 years? I might have aged him there a little bit, but I think it's nice, really nice words there from the manager. Do you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously Tottenham do have a good relationship with them. Obviously last year we had Bale as well. We had Roden going as well. We've got a kid who's in the academy called Elliot Thorpe. We've got one in the under-17s now called Will Andy Japan. So there's a big connection with Wales and Tottenham anyway. You obviously got Yaya Toure, who's doing his coaching badges now, but he's also part of the Welsh Coaching Association. That's where he's doing his badges. So there is certainly a connection there. And I was pleased to see Ben Davies be returned if he was at any risk of being injured, because we need him for this run-in, make no mistakes about that.
It's interesting. I've seen the comments come up about Joe Rodon and whether he'll get any game time now. You just feel with Joe Rodon that the opportunity he had to get game time seemed to have passed the minute in which Dyer was out and he wasn't selected and Sanchez was favoured. It almost felt that was a closed door. I mean, apparently Rob Page, again, manager of Wales, said that he knew Antonio Conte was watching on Thursday, and rightly so. He was very complimentary about Joe's performance. He thought he was outstanding. He did play very, very well for Wales, to be fair. And again, for Wales, it seems to be an automatic first choice. I mean, John, what's your view on Joe Rodon? Do you think he's got any kind of a future at Spurs, bearing in mind the lack of game time he's had this season?
No, I don't. I think many managers now have had a look and worked with him on the training ground. There's a decent proportion of our fan base that want him to be given a chance. But I think sometimes when so many managers are saying the same thing, who work with him every day, you have to go with that. I mean, Rodon has come in and had a couple of decent games, but I also remember a fair number of mistakes in very limited game time. The other fact that Japhet Tanganga made 19 appearances this season compared to Rodon's handful tells you where they are in the respective pecking orders. For whatever reason, you've got to consider that Rodon counts as a non-homegrown player as well in European squad rules. Tanganga counts as homegrown and club trained. Obviously, Tanganga we got for nothing through the academy. I expect that Rodon is an easy one. We talked about players that will move on this summer, squad players. Roska mentioned it earlier with Bergvine. I think Rodon is the top of that list for his own good as well. The fact that he can go off and play for Wales and have a commanding performance, he needs to be playing week in, week out somewhere. I thought he'd probably go to Brighton, if I'm being honest with you, having worked with Potter at Swansea before. The fact they lost Dan Burn in January, they lost Ben White in the summer, I expect that's quite a sensible move for all parties if he does make that move.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. Ross, coming over to you quickly on that for you, Rodon. Have you been surprised by his lack of game time under Conte?
No, it's been the same pattern what you mentioned earlier with he's below Ben Davies. he's made a lot of mistakes as well. You know, I do feel that, you know, John mentioned it before. You know, I don't feel that he's strong enough for the squad. We do need to get stronger. You know, replacements in that field. So I can't see him, and it makes sense for him to go to Brighton. It does.
It's interesting. It's really interesting, Ross. You say that. I mean, because again, Jay, come over to you. You know, he's worked with Mourinho. He's worked with Mason, of course, Nuno, and now Conte. And, you know, there's 4 or 5 managers there that just simply quite haven't fancied him. Again, they can't all be wrong what they're seeing in training, right, Jay?
No, I think that's the main thing, really. I think John makes a great point there in terms of all the managers had that opportunity to look at him, and they, you know, if they really thought he was that good, he would have been getting those opportunities. I think it's, you know, it's a different thing playing for Wales. You know, of course, we see some players going away into international duty and playing fantastically well, and then they just can't quite do it for the club. So, you know, I think it's maybe another situation with Roden where he's fantastic for his country, but, you know, clearly he's not been doing enough in training or showing quite enough in training to kind of merit his place. But yes, I still think he's a fairly decent player, and he's another player who I'm sure there'll be lots of interest in the summer from, you know, various different clubs. I think I go again with John there in terms of saying I think he's kind of at a level where I think a Premier League club might come in for him, as, you know, he certainly has impressed for Wales, but for Spurs, you know, having worked under 3 or 4 different managers now, and none of them have fancied him, there's definitely something in that, unfortunately.
Jay, let's stick with you. Listen, a player that we saw again on the international stage with Wales, Gareth Bale, seemingly taking the game by the scruff of its neck, scoring 2 stunning goals as they beat Austria 2-1, set up a playoff final now against either Scotland or Ukraine for a place in Qatar. There's been, you know, reports that, you know, Bale could sign a short-term deal with a new club and retire immediately after this year's World Cup. Could you see him again with a reunion to Tottenham? It'll be second time on the base of a reunion, third time he'd be playing for us. Can you see him under Conte?
Potentially. I think. Look, for me, I'd say my heart wants him back, and I want to see him back in a Spurs shirt, because of course we didn't get to see him play at the stadium. It would be brilliant, and of course we can still see what he's done in terms of, you know, he's still producing for Wales. He of course I think he had a very good season for us as well in terms of, in comparison to the amount of game time he had. I think he had a great impact for us, but his full focus is going to be on the World Cup. Again, it will be on, you know, he's going to be injured quite a lot of the time, and he's not going to be very readily available. He's going to be on still very good money, I think. You know, he's not going to come, because he's on 600 grand a week at the moment. I don't think he's going to come. He's obviously going to come down at a fair whack of that, but he's still going to be on big money. And do you want to pay that to a player who's going to be very rarely available for us, who's going to have his full focus on being ready for Wales at the World Cup? And then kind of, where does his head go after the World Cup? You know, will he be in football at all? For me personally, I kind of think that after the World Cup's done, I think that he's done as well, because I think he just doesn't really seem to have that love for football. Yes, of course, for Wales, he's obviously got that great passion for playing for them, but it's difficult, because I'd love to see him back at Spurs, but I just fear that maybe it's just not the right option. It's maybe best to look elsewhere now.
John, let's come around to you. Gareth Bale, I know he's a player that, listen, you loved. Again, coming back the second time was almost like fairy tale, you know, in terms of the way that was done. It's just a shame we just weren't in there to see him. It's the biggest shame. I think we all feel just a little bit cheated that second time around. We weren't in the stadium to witness some of the goals he scored. John, can you see it again? Could you see another reunion, or do you just think that door is now firmly closed?
I would love Tottenham to make that move. I feel like with the 5 subs available next season, I think having a Gareth, all this talk about, we need to save himself for Wales. Well, he needs to get fit. He needs to get match fit to save himself for Wales in the first place. I just feel that, you know, he's a winner. He brings phenomenal leadership skills to our team. He knows everyone inside out of the club. I feel like it'd be a no-brainer to sell a Bergvine, for example, for 25-30 million and sign Bale for free. I just see that as an absolute no-brainer, and then you're using that money to then invest in centre-halves or whatever position we need. Bale counts as club trained, Bale counts as homegrown, so that could then enable you to sell a Harry Winks, for example, and not worry about registration reasons. And to top it off, I just think that he's still a wonderful player. He scored 11 league goals in absolute minimal starts. People say he didn't score against the big teams. He didn't play against the big teams. The one time he did play against the big teams, it's away to Leicester. He come on and scored 2 unbelievable goals to see us finishing above Arsenal. I just think he's a magical player. He can take set pieces, something we're screaming for. And I just think having him as the last, 25, 30 minutes of the game to come on and grab you a goal. He can score all sorts of goals. He can score headers. He can score free kicks, long range goals. He's still got pace. I just think he would need to get match fitness, and we could afford him that with 5 subs next season. I certainly think we could, and I think we could sell a Lucas Moura or a Bergvine and effectively replace him with Bale for nothing.
Yeah, like you said, 11 Premier League goals, 16 in all competitions. Fair to say we missed those goals this season. Ross, coming over to you. I mean, the thing with Bale, again, what seems to be creeping up, as Jamie kind of referenced there, is that whether Spurs will be his priority and whether we're happy to almost be, second in that pecking order to Wales. Do you have a view on Bale coming back in a Spurs shirt? Can you see it happening again?
I'd love to see it happen. Just like what John was saying, I think it would be a good thing. And like John said again, it was he knows the squad, he knows the team, he knows everything about the club. So it kind of makes sense for him to do that. But yeah, it'll be the money that would be the decider for that. And even last season, Bale, Vinicius as well. Their goals are missing from our squad. It was good to have those guys contributing alongside Kane as well. We need more goal scorers, so it would be nice to have someone that knows everything inside out and that could just slot into the team and even just come off the bench.
Yeah, no, I agree. Listen, he's a game changer. Another player that is a game changer who had again a really good international period was Christian Ericsson. He scored in his first game back for Denmark against Holland. Followed up with another goal against Serbia. I mean, listen, it's doing the rounds at the moment. I saw Jamie trying to really promote bringing him back. Let's ask Jamie first. There's a big grin on his face. Jay, have you seen enough already then to be convinced Ericsson automatically gets back into our team when everybody's fit? Does that work?
It's very difficult to know where he fit into a Conte system. I think we saw that at Inter. I don't think he got a great deal of game time under Conte there either. I think we've seen with Conte how he sets up his midfield. If we are going to stick with Conte next season, I think we'll see 2 midfielders that are kind of, hard workers, the likes of Mendes and Højbjerg. And whether Ericsson kind of fits that bill, obviously he doesn't. So, is he going to come into the squad and replace a Kulusevski or a Heung-min Son? I don't think he does. But again, it's, I think he'd be a great option, and we do need options. I think everyone's always, I'm seeing a lot of people kind of saying that next year they want to see us have like a deep squad. And he would really I think he could definitely come into the squad and do a really good role. He just seems to be on a really great renaissance since he's come back. So, for me, I would have him back. Of course, he does seem to have a good relationship with Antonio Conte. But of course, we've seen him previously under Conte and he didn't quite fit into his system. So I think Conte maybe sets up his team slightly differently to how he did at Inter Milan, though. He did play 2 strikers, whereas at Spurs, he's obviously got a striker and then obviously wingers around them, or forward. So maybe he could fit in, but I personally would take him. But I think Jason mentioned to me on Twitter, does Conte want him? Then I'd be fully behind it because I think that, he's really as impressed.
Yeah, I mean, we know, John, coming over to you, that they're actually staying in the hotel at the moment. So they're probably seeing a lot of each other when they're over here in the UK. Is it just easy to say, John, come back? And because the only thing I say about Ericsson is that we can't forget that, there was clearly a falling out there between himself and Daniel Levy. The dispute over the contract, the way he left wasn't probably in the greatest of ways. And listen, Spurs have gone back before. They've obviously brought Gareth Bale back to the club. We've been there with Jermaine Defoe, Robbie Keane. We can know lots of players have come back to Spurs. Can you see that happening, John, based on content, the way he plays with his teams? Does Ericsson fit into this structure?
I think you make the structure fit Ericsson. I think he's that good. I hold him actually in huge respect. I know people say, he down tools or he wanted to go or whatever. Let's remember that when he went, he was free to sign a pre-contract and go for nothing. He could have signed that contract then and there and said, I'm going for nothing, for more money, more wages. He didn't do that. He got Tottenham £20 million, which, people might not say is a lot of money, but he didn't need to do that. But he got us £20 million. He went off. He won a Scudetto, another winner. I would have Ericsson back all day in the squad. I think he's an unbelievable talent. I'm delighted to see the way he's, brought his career back. It's fantastic. It really is. And I feel like he's still got so much to offer. And I feel like this period at Brentford is merely a training exercise for him, knowing that the bigger task will come in the summer. And I think if we don't move for him, somebody else will, and we will regret that. I think we've seen the impact Coutinho has had at Villa, for example. He's another player that I advocated we really should have gone for in January, and we didn't quite do that. But Ericsson is obviously going to be available on a free. Already knows Conte, already knows London, already knows Hotspur Way, already knows Tottenham. Fans love him. I think it's an absolute no-brainer on a free transfer. And I don't imagine he's on huge money at Brentford either.
It's interesting, Ross. We're seeing reports that with regards to Ericsson, that he'll be committed to Brentford unless a top six club comes in for him in the summer. You just feel if there's the appetite there of the player wanting to join Spurs, joining to sign and to deny him going to a rival would maybe also make sense, because whoever picks up Ericsson, you've already seen the quality. He is finishing, he's still there, he's still got assists in his game. Do you think realistically it's a player that we could sign, Ross, under this current formation?
Possibly. It's all down to Conte. If Conte wants him, then I'm all for it. To be fair, it's up to the player as well if he really wants to come back down this side. I can't see him going to a rival in the top six unless they're going to pay him good money. But it would make sense for him, just like Bale, to come back. He's familiar with everything. He knows how the clubs run. So, but it's up to Conte. It's up to Conte.
The only thing that worries me a little bit, Ericsson, obviously he left Tottenham with a desire to win trophies. Obviously he went to Inter Milan, he got the title over there. I just want to sincerely hope that if he was to sign for Spurs, he's got that genuine belief that he can win. But again, you'd like to think it'll be tied up with Conte, because it seems everything with Conte is tied up between a lot of those players, like Harry Kane, who we spoke about earlier. Now, we've had some obviously news this week in terms of a couple of new deals for some of the players youth-wise. And John, it's good to bring you in on this, because we've seen Charlie Sayers, that's today, of course, recording on Wednesday here, signing his first professional contract with the club. He's celebrated his 18th birthday on Tuesday. He joined our academy from Southend United in December of last year. He's made 9 appearances to date for our under-18 so far, many of them as a captain, scoring twice. Is that good to get that one over the line, John?
Yeah, I think that was kind of promised to him when he joined. I think it was just a formality when he turned 18 earlier this week. That was always going to happen. Obviously, when he joined from Southend, he was provisionally told it was a 3-year contract. Boyhood Tottenham fan, settled in really nicely, actually. He came into the under-18s. I imagine they told him, look, Dennis Sirkin left for Sunderland in the summer. There is a clear spot to be the left back for the under-23s. And then push on and see how far you can take that. So I think he'll establish himself as the first team left back next year for the under-23s. And he's certainly one for the future, but he's settled in really, really nicely and has got a good physique and can also play at centre half as well.
Interesting. And also, John, Brandon Austin signing a new contract with the club. I think there's real promising hopes for him as a keeper. He's only 23, a real product of our academy system. You're going to know him a lot more than me. He's been named as a sub for us on 13 senior competitive games this season. He's previously spent time on loan at Danish side Viborg and Orlando City in the MLS. John, is it one that we should be keeping an eye on? Is he going to, hopefully in a few years' time, really push whoever that number one is, probably after Hugo's left, right?
Yeah, I don't think so, if I'm being totally honest with you. With Brandon, I feel like we've actually got another keeper in the academy that would be more likely to push on and make that claim for a future role. With keepers, though, it's very, very difficult. I put a tweet out about this week whereby look how well Dean Henderson did last year. He went on loan to Sheffield United, loads of plaudits, got into the England squad. He's now gone back to United and not been able to oust De Gea on a long-term basis. Keepers have got to, two scenarios happen. You either go on loan and do outstandingly well and the club make a position for you and move on their other keeper, or there's got to be an injury crisis where both your keepers get injured. It rarely, rarely happens. It's really difficult as a keeper to break through. Hardest position, no doubt at all. But the keeper I mentioned before was Timothy Lotalata. He's a under-18s goalkeeper who's started playing up for the under-23s this year. He's also France under-19s #1 goalkeeper. During this international break, went away, made 3 appearances for them. Very vocal, great reflexes, and has got a good size to him as well. He's the one I really want to see Tottenham build up and get a network of good loans to benefit him for the future. I think that's one to really look out for, Lotalata.
Interesting. John, just a final one we haven't mentioned yet. Alfie Devine, I think he provided an assist during his international break. Listen, there's lots of good talk around Alfie Devine at the moment. Is it going to be too early, John, for next season? He's only, 16, 17? Am I right in saying? Very, very young still.
Yeah, 17. And I think with Alfie, Alistair Gold, friend of the show, made a point of saying the plan for Tottenham next year, or certainly the message inside the club, is that he will stay around Tottenham next year, owing to homegrown registration reasons. Because he's joined from Wigan as a 15-year-old, he hasn't done his full 3 years yet to count as homegrown and club trained, which he will the year after. So unlike, obviously, Dane, that's been at the club since he was 8, Alfie obviously only joined at 15, so it's a different pathway. So I think Dane will go out on loan next year and Alfie will stay around the first team squad, hoping to make some minutes here and there.
Okay, interesting, John. Thanks so much for that. Faz on the screen that says, is it not time to move on from our ex-players? I mean, my reference back to you, Faz, would be, a response to that would be, are those ex-players better than what we've got at the moment? And I think, if you look at the likes of Ericsson, as a player, when you look at what we are still, for me, in need of a lock picker. I know maybe it isn't what Conte wants in his system, but when you see the way he's performing, I think it's very hard to deny a player like that wouldn't improve us. Do you know what I mean? I think, again, that's why case by case, looking at players, Gareth Bale, like we said, look at the goals he contributed to Spurs. You can't believe that in big moments for Tottenham, with hopefully more games next season in some form of European competition, he wouldn't benefit us. Now, we have seen, previously this week, Fabio Parrott come out and give us an 8-minute update on Spurs. And, I think there's only a little bit of frustration that these haven't been done more often. We mentioned this with the Tottenham Hotspur Supporters Trust on Sunday, that, we thought with Parrott's appointment, we'd be getting a bit more transparency as to, what the plan is for the club. There was also, potential talk that Parrott would be talking to supporter fan groups, the likes, hopefully, of Last Word on Spurs and Lilywhite Rose, Jamie over at Daily Hotspur. There's hopefully confidence that Parrott would do that. As of this moment, still, we await the call for the interview. As we wait by the phones, we might be waiting a bloody long time, to be honest with you. So don't get too carried away here. We'll let you know if it does come eventually. But Rosk, he says, opening, that we are in a much better position than we were 4 or 5 months ago. 2 months ago, every one of us was pessimistic. At the moment, it's the opposite. He went on to say, our project is to rebuild the club, rebuild the team, be competitive in the long term, and be competitive every season. Ross, did you feel from that interview more inspired once you heard it? Or do you feel at the moment it's just a lot of the same rhetoric and we need to see what actually happens on the pitch? We've got Ross on mute. We're going to mute.
Yeah, when he keeps mentioning about the long term, and the thing is, we've been in the long term for a long time, and that was kind of a bit frustrating to keep hearing that same thing, the long term. So hopefully, I'd like to see some progress. The progress that's happening, I'm really happy with. We can see the system that Conte is trying to play. We're feeling comfortable in an international break. We can actually feel that we're looking forward to actually seeing another game. Do you know what I mean? Rather than actually feeling, like we don't want to hear nothing, don't want to speak about it. Do you know what I mean? So we're in a positive sort of feeling about, the next game, what's going on next. So hopefully, yeah, I'd like to see a bit more transparency in what he's saying, and yeah, definitely needs to come with a bit more, I'll say, more frequent sort of message.
You know what's interesting for me, John, when that came out, is I know Martin Clegg also picked up on this from the Trust. There's not one word about winning in there. We've got Kane at the club, we've got Son at the club, we've got Conte here. There's nothing about, winning. And I know, again, he's talking about an update now and it's more about, planning for the future. Are we losing sight of that, John? Just essentially, we've got one of the best managers here in world football. We've got one of the best strikers in the world, Harry Kane. Hugo Lloris is still up there as one of the best goalkeepers. We've got one of the best centre-backs, in terms of Christian Romero. Does it worry you just maybe that the lack of... again, I use that term winning. Should that be used in these statements, John, or am I blown out of proportion?
I think you can only judge it on when the statement's made, if I'm being totally honest with you. And I think he made it at a point whereby, obviously, we're out of all cup competitions this season, and we probably can't win the title. We definitely can't win the title. So I think it was fair talking about the goals and realistic goals that are in front of us. We have improved the squad, in my opinion, simply adding Kulibetsky and Bentancur, 2 players that are able to contribute to Premier League games for the full 90 minutes. Is a phenomenal improvement on where we were before. So look, we've got 9 cup finals left, 7 wins, including one over Arsenal. That will do it for me, my opinion. We're back in the top 4, and then we can start looking at what we can do next year. Then he can come out with another statement. But personally, we've gone from having no statements whatsoever. We've had a chairman's message once a year. So now we're getting these after every transfer window. That's an improvement for me. Nothing to complain about. I like them.
Yeah, gradual. It adds up to 3 or 4. So listen, hopefully it bodes well for transparency. Jay also said in that statement, I'm trying not to laugh as I read this, Eric Dyer, amazing. Ben Davies, the same. Sanchez, Jafet Tanganga, Roden, when they played, they did well. So we have a very good group of defenders, so we're very happy. What did you take of that statement for you, Jamie? Were you happy with what came out there from Parrott? Could we have asked for any more?
I'd say on the winning bit, I think at the moment I think the situation of next season is going to be very uncertain. I think a lot, as John mentioned, is going to depend on Champions League football. And I think that kind of when we get to the end of the season, we know what we're working with next season. I think as well with Conte, I don't necessarily think that Champions League is the be-all and end-all for Conte in terms of Spurs have to be in that. I think that will play a big role in maybe in terms of how he's backed. But I think if Conte looks at it and thinks, he's getting in the super adequate players, he's getting in more Bentancur, Kulusevski, because, we don't necessarily need, to be spending big money. We've seen that with the two new signings. They weren't big money signings. They were very smart signings, in fact. They were great deals. So, if we're kind of showing Conte that we're getting in the right players, we're getting in players that suit his system. And there's kind of, we're at a stage where we're able to really go and, we're able to kick on. Of course, we are starting to see signs of Conte's system really being in place. And, I think if Conte, we get to the summer and we'll see where we're at. So I think the big thing as well was with the new signings, he was kind of speaking about how, he was able to identify these players for Conte and kind of, they're fitting into his system. And I think this will be the big thing. I think obviously with Nuno, it was a guy he's not worked with before. He's not really had experience, but he knows exactly what Conte is going to want. And I think it was no coincidence that these two new guys have come in and hit the ground so well under Conte. I think they're guys that just suit him so well, because obviously with Conte, I think the big thing is having the mentality as well. And these two new guys have come in with absolutely the perfect mentality. They're desperate to kind of prove themselves. Obviously had a difficult time at Juventus. And, they're showing fantastic mentality. They're showing great ability. They're doing exactly what Spurs have needed. So I think our recruitment, although it was kind of difficult to see that in the summer, I think now we've got a manager that he's worked with before, that he's kind of got experience of buying those, the right sort of players for that system. I think our recruitment will start to get better now. Of course, as I said, it was difficult to see that in the summer, but I'm more confident now that we're going to go and get the right players for Antonio Conte. And as I said, I don't think you necessarily need to spend big money. I think it's about just being smart, knowing the manager, and he knows that. So I'm definitely looking forward to seeing the summer. It'd be fantastic if we can get the Champions League, because I think if we were to get Champions League money, you've got that attraction of being in the Champions League, London, the stadium, everything about the club would just be unbelievably attractive, and I think we'd really be able to kick on. And I don't think we're very far off winning. I really think that this is going to be a massive summer for Spurs. I think Spurs have got an opportunity here where you've got a good squad, but there are areas of clear weakness, and we're already seeing, even with these big weaknesses, the fullbacks are meant to be crucial for Conte's system. And even with poor wing backs, we're still playing good football. So if we can go and kind of build in, get the key positions that Conte needs, then I'm really excited for next season. But equally, it could be a disaster. We've seen this so many times with Tottenham when we've come to a kind of a real turn, a moment which could define us. And sometimes it's not worked out. But I'm feeling very confident with kind of everything that's in place that we can get it right.
Yeah, I mean, listen, Parrott spoke as if, hopefully, fingers crossed, Conte is here for the foreseeable future. I won't put long-term on it because, I mean, who knows what football is now in terms of long-term. We've seen Lloris come out during the international break and say, since the arrival of Antonio Conte, we sense a real progression. Even if we had a few difficulties, we get the feeling that we're taking it to the next level as a team. And I think we'll be ready for the final push to go and get a European spot. I mean, again, when you hear comments like that from Lloris, it doesn't feel like there's a short-term around Conte, but again, you do feel it's going to be a defining 9 games. I just hope for our sake that John has referenced they're not cup finals, because we know Spurs don't win cup finals. So we hope they're 9 important games for Tottenham. Rosk, to come round to you. We've seen Fabrizio Romano, friend of the show, say, Antonio Conte wants Kane to stay at all costs. He actually went to say if Antonio will stay at Tottenham, it's because he knows that Harry Kane is staying. He wants to make sure that Harry Kane will be a key part of Tottenham's project. Conte and Kane's future is linked. Do you also agree, Ross, that, that really does kind of cement the bond there with regards to Kane and Conte, that if we can keep Kane happy, Conte vice versa, we've got a very, good next season ahead of us?
Yeah, hopefully. I mean, if the feeling's mutual between both of them, then and they want to stay and win stuff here, then I'm all for it. I mean, if it's the opposite, if Kane leaves and Conte wants to leave based on that's where it'd be a bit tricky. But hopefully, if not looking at it negatively, but if Kane does leave and he's really adamant that he wants to leave, then hopefully Conte gets that money and he can reinvest and get the players that he wants as well. But ideally, in an ideal world, I'd want both of them to stay and push on for this season, because it'll be a really good season next season.
Absolutely. Well, what we will do, we will go for our final break of the show. For our listeners that are on audio, taking you into this break, you're going to hear from a couple of Newcastle podcasters. We've got Matt Ketchell and we've also got Matty from the Gallagate Shots giving us their views on that Newcastle game coming around fast this Sunday. Now, a lot of you will already know about this, but And we're going to give it another plug. We're delighted on the last one on Spurs to be sponsored by NordVPN. Now, Nord are, of course, a secure, fast and easy to use VPN. NordVPN, in our opinion, they're the Harry Kane of VPNs. Incredible in all their facets with device protection as strong as Christian Romero. But the internet speed of Heung-min Son, not Adama Traore. You have to wait for that one. However, 5,200 servers across 59 countries around the world. NordVPN automatically selects the best server based on location, loads, or your specific needs. We are currently running a discount code at the moment that will allow you to get, 1 month free plus a bonus gift and a huge discount by using that code LWOS. Now, for me personally, using Nord, I found it a great way to get YouTube Premium at a cheaper way. I mean, you can change your location settings, of course, by using either India or Argentina. And dare I say, if you are flying, also a great way to try and avoid all those dodgy internet connections. So make sure you check that out. NordVPN, our friends. Thank you so much as always. And we've got Newcastle to come, guys, this coming Sunday. John, let's start with you. You referenced it's 9 cup finals to come for Spurs. The dreaded line that you could hear from a Tottenham fan, 9 cup finals. What are you expecting, John, ahead of this weekend? Do you expect Spurs to carry on their winning form in the Premier League?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. If this game had been a month ago, I would have been far more worried about it. I think that Newcastle are now completely safe. I think that fact when Trippier came in and they won those 3 straight games was massive for them. I think Newcastle are safe now, and I think the fact that we've got Kane and Son seemingly both banging form at the minute will have a little bit too much for Newcastle on the day. But make no mistake, they're a very good side. I hope that Bruno Guimaraes is away with Brazil late into the hours. I know that also the striker they napped up from Burnley, his name escapes me now, but he's on international duty as well, the big guy. So they're missing a couple of their normal, Chris Wood, there we go. They're missing a couple of their normal starting players. So we've got to take advantage of that, and we've got to get the 3 points over the line against Newcastle, because if we don't, our opportunities are going to start running out, because we have got Liverpool away. That's the one I'm desperately worried about from that run of 9 games left. So games like Newcastle at home, although they're recent improvement and form since January, we still have to be brushing them aside and getting those points on the board. Make no mistake about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Spurs at the moment, of course, as they enter these 9 games, we're sitting, Jay, coming over to you, 5th in the league. And of course, we're all hoping to overtake Arsenal in that top 4 battle. There has been some murmurings as we're on tonight recording that Arsenal fixture, again, from the Daily Mail, this has come. So again, listen, depends how reputable you want to believe that source is, that game could drop from what we're hearing between the week beginning May the 9th. So it does feel like it's almost going to become the top 4 playoff, but that's obviously dependent on the teams continuing their run of form. Newcastle, Jay, they're going to be tricky opposition. I know they had obviously back-to-back defeats, but their form since Eddie Howe's come in, he's transformed them, hasn't he, really, if we're being honest. They look search for relegation, and now, barring a really bad run, they should stay up. What have you made of Eddie Howe going in there and doing the job he's done so far?
Yeah, they have been really impressive, and I think they made some really kind of shrewd signings. I think a lot of people were talking of them going in and signing these top-tier players straight away, but I think they've done it quite cleverly in terms of, they've gone and got players that were going to keep them in the division. I think it could have been maybe a bit of a disaster if they went out and signed all these players that aren't used to being in a relegation fight. But their chance of business was very sensible, and they've done a great job. But it does look as though kind of right now they are on pretty much on the beach at the moment. I think they are pretty much safe. They've done a fantastic job in getting there, and that's full credit to them. But ultimately, we've seen, as you said, they've suffered 2 defeats in a row now. So I think for a side with our ambitions, we have to be going and beating them on the weekend. There's absolutely no excuses for that. So I think for me, I'm looking forward to it. I think that Spurs, they're starting to click as well. They're giving me a lot more confidence. I know as Spurs fans, we always laugh and we get a bit of confidence, but I think you have to do it when there's genuine optimism. And you look at that front 3, it's arguably one of the best in the league at the moment. It's really starting to click. Kulusevski's been fantastic in terms of contribution. Obviously, we spoke at the start of the season that we hadn't replaced Gareth Bale, but now we've got a guy who's coming in and contributing a great deal to this team. So you've got a really solid front 3. You've got Bentancur doing fantastically well in midfield. And then, of course, defensively, we're looking much better as well. Of course, we want to go and improve on that in the summer big time. But there's lots to like about this squad at the moment for Spurs. And we are looking like we're starting to click. I think we've definitely put pressure on Arsenal at the moment. I think if you look at a lot of their fans, they're talking about Spurs maybe being over their shoulders. They're starting to talk about us. I think it was a big psychological win against West Ham. I think, not necessarily the biggest win. Of course, it was a West Ham side that were coming off a very tricky game against Seville where they'd used a lot of energy in 120 minutes. But for Spurs, it was just such a big win psychologically. As I said, Arsenal are now talking about us, and we're well in that race for the top four. So I'm really looking forward to the rest of the season. We've got a lot to play for, and we are starting to click. And I know it can come out, and maybe I look a bit silly, but there's genuine optimism, and that's you just have to say that. So I'm really looking forward to the game, and it'll definitely be interesting.
Just before being Roskin, Jay, just to sit you for 1 second, I want to ask you about Oliver Skipp. I mean, there was suggestions from Conte that he would hopefully be back for this one, although we heard from friend of the show, Ali Gold, that may have got slightly carried away in that update. Listen, there's great frustration from Conte every time you hear him at a pre-match presser, in terms of Spurs medical staff and him not being fit and available. I mean, if he was available, would you look to bring him straight in, or would you keep it with Højbjerg and Bentancur because they have been playing quite well together?
Yeah, I think that's the good thing at the moment. I mean, Skipp is a big player for us. He has been a big loss, but however, I think that the guys that are covered for him at the moment, the likes of Højbjerg and Bentancur, they've formed a good partnership at the moment. So they're definitely sticking in the team for me at the moment. And I mean, it says a lot about those two. That, as I said, you've got such an important player like Skipp potentially ready to come back into the team, but I don't think you change it right now. I think you'd have to keep it how it is. So yes, I'd stick with the two in the middle at the moment.
Absolutely. To Crackers there on the screen. Cracks, looking forward to having you back on Sunday. Big game. Cracks will be with us to review that Newcastle game. Depending on that result, he will be here. I promise you he will be. We're going to need some analogies depending on how that result does go. Ross, coming over to you. Listen, Newcastle themselves, I mean, at the moment, they look quite safe and sound. I mean, they're in the bottom half of the league, but they'll be keen to get back to winning ways and try and extend that 9-point lead over 18th place Watford. I mean, I picked up on some of the comments there. Some saying because of the nature of where they are now, they do feel a little bit safer than before. They may have a lack of motivation going to this game. Can you see that? Because from under Eddie Howe, I think he will be really drilling these players to say we're not safe yet. We're going to need the points.
Yeah, I think they're gonna fight. They're gonna fight for this game, but I feel like the system we've got at the moment, I feel like we've got something going on here now. I feel like we've broken that win-loss system that we've had running, and I feel like we're going to push on now. And I'm confident about this game. I feel like we are going to get something out of this game. I can't see Newcastle getting fully into it. We might hit them quickly and just take them out of the game. I see a couple of score predictions, 3-0. I'd love that.
You know what's interesting, John? I mean, how do you think we're going to approach this one tactically? Because, Spurs, I feel like, when we had those really poor defeats at home to Southampton and Wolves. And I think with a game like this, you do need the fans to stay with you. And the fans it was amazing against West Ham. It was a London derby. The thing with this was we know that obviously a lot of teams would have played before we're playing on Sunday, which almost heightens the pressure even more on us to get a result. Are you confident that, we can... Well, I want to know from you how you feel Spurs should set up for this one based on the players Newcastle have got and the way they're playing.
Yeah, I think there's a point to be made that Newcastle's last two visits to the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium have been a 1-1 draw and a 1-0 victory for them. So we've struggled to create chances, we've struggled to get goals, and they've been very strong defensively. And that goes back all the way to the Tim Krul days. You remember that sodding game he had against us at the old White Hart Lane, making 900 saves or whatever it was. We've had trouble with Newcastle home. Away from home, we seem to go up there and beat them, but at home we really struggle against Newcastle. But this one, I just feel like we need a fast start. We need to get at them, minute one, and see what pressure we can put under Newcastle. Because if Kane or Son can score early, it's a very different game. The fans are up for it then. The atmosphere is building in the stadium. And if we can get an early goal, I feel like the atmosphere will be very, very good. And that could spur the team on, hence the pun, over the line to get those 3 points. I just think that Son and Kane are in such good form at the minute that it'll be hard for Newcastle to stop them on the day. And as I said, I feel like if Bruno Guimaraes comes back from Brazil late, that's a big loss for them as well.
That's good points. I mean, we know, Howe admitted that they're taking the cautious approach with their star players like Kieran Trippier, Callum Wilson. They're continuing their recoveries from their long-term injuries. John Joe Shelby should be ready for this game. He's actually been really good for Newcastle since Howe's come in, really, really improved. But Jamal Lewis, Isaac Hayden remain their long-term absentees. For Tottenham, as we picked up on earlier, Sessegnon still out at the moment. Oliver Skipp, I suppose we'll get more obviously updates from Conte in that pre-match press conference on Friday to see exactly where he is. But listen, Bentancur and Højbjerg for the moment. I know it's probably not everybody's preferred pairing based on, if everybody was fit. But listen, they're doing the job. Let's close it, guys. Let's get some predictions. Let's start with Ross. Ross, what are you going for?
I'm going for 3-0.
Okay. Clean sheet, 3-0 Spurs win. What more do we want than that? Brilliant. That'll keep the goal difference nice and ticking over. Let's come around to John next. John, what are you going to go for? We're going to unmute you, John. That's the problem there. No one wants to do a prediction now. Let's come around to John.
Yeah. Can you hear me now, Rick?
We've got you. Yeah.
Yeah. All good. I'm going to go for a 2-1 Tottenham win.
Okay. 2-1 Spurs win. An edgy one. At the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. Jay, what are you going for?
No, I like Roska's prediction. I like 3-0. I think that again, I think we're in really good form, and I know it's always difficult to kind of tempt fate or whatever you want to say. And obviously Spurs, we know all about that. But I'm really quite confident for this one, and it's going to be interesting. We do need to start fast. I think that's going to be really important. We did that against West Ham, and crowd was right behind us. I mean, that's been the kind of the strange thing at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. And I think when the fans really get behind the team, always a fantastic performance. We saw that in the Man City game at the start of the season. But equally, when it's really frustrating, the crowd can kind of really get on the players' backs. And I think that definitely played a part in those 2 defeats against Southampton and Wolves. The fans really became on edge. So hopefully a kind of a fast start to really get the crowd going. But as I said, the West Ham game was a massive game for us, just because I think there was a real sense of unity from everyone.
Absolutely,
and a real belief as well. I think mentally it was so big for us. You saw Conte, geeing up the crowd when everyone was singing his name, just togetherness and a real belief that we can do something this season. So I'm really looking forward to getting back to the stadium. Hopefully I'll be at the stadium, permitting I get rid of COVID. Hopefully I should be good for that. But no, I'm really hopefully be at the stadium on the weekend. Looking forward to the match for sure.
Amazing. Well, listen, guys. Ross, let's come around to you first. Ross, anything in the diary you want to let us know about? Anything worth promoting?
Yeah. I've got an album that it's nearly finished now. It's coming out in the summer. I've just nearly finished that. Getting back to touring as well, because I haven't done much over the last 2 years as well, which has been quite cool. So yeah, it should be coming over to a few countries in a few weeks, months time as well.
Amazing. Listen, looking forward to that. Make sure you keep an eye on Roska's socials for that. And Ross will be joining us for next season, hopefully, for the non-Europa Conference League nights. Hopefully it is Champions League. That is pending. We'll wait to see. Such as nature of Spurs, we can't say that just yet with 9 games to go, but who knows? Obviously, the wonderful John Wenham also back with us tonight. John, been a pleasure having you. Listen, you've got great podcast. And again, if you want to hear more John's thoughts on the youth that you've just heard throughout the show, got to go check that out. John, give us a reminder. Where can we find your great podcast?
Yeah, it's at Lilywhite Rose. Find it on any of your normal podcast providers. It's a short, bite-sized, 15 to 20 minutes update on everything that's going on with the academy at Tottenham Hotspur each week.
Love it. And we most certainly do enjoy it. John, thank you so much. Lovely to have you back on.
Pleasure, mate.
We're going to hopefully get John back on in the near future. It's for all of us, it's tricky, with kids and time and commitments and whatever.
Yep.
The time in the Spurs hasn't really helped this season timing-wise. And I didn't want to put John through those Europa Conference League nights, so I gave him to Roska instead. So, I think John did suffer one.
You're welcome.
We're passing him around. And also pleased to have this man back, Jamie Brown from the Daily Hotspur again. Just as Jamie's fitness commitments, we've got to say, it's also been the reason why we couldn't have got Jamie on more. But it's been lovely to have Jay back on. He's back with us in a couple of weeks' time as well. Jay, listen, you're offering now, which we do love, the pre-match build-up. So the great thing now is, ahead of the game, when you want to know team news, more than likely, you've always got a preview going on the Spurs. Where can we find that out, Jay?
Yep, so I've just started on Twitch. I've been doing a pre-match show, kind of looking ahead to the game, maybe discussing the team news. I think, yes, thank you very much for that, Jan. Hopefully, fingers crossed. But yeah, I mean, as I said, I've been doing kind of a pre-match show, looking ahead to the team news, kind of discussing a bit before the game. Maybe something a bit different to kind of maybe the bias that you see on Sky Sports, where we get a lot of disrespect. All Spurs focused. Obviously, I think Roska, you mentioned at the start of the show as well. It's the only problem with the show is our team's been very predictable to kind of always been very predictable. So that's kind of been the one boring thing with the show. We always do a predicted lineup and it's always a spot on. But no, it's been really good fun. I've had some great guests on. So obviously I don't think I'll be doing one before the Newcastle game just because I'll be going. But all the away matches I'll be doing the show, and that's on Twitch.
Fantastic. And also worth mentioning, Jay, we sometimes do get a sneaky one in there. So we saw a transfer one in there last week. As much as Jason tried to bring it down, I was pushing it for you. Yeah, we've got a couple more transfer ones in there, hopefully, Jay.
We'll see. I mean, if I can squeeze any sort of transfer out, that's what I'll do. But no, obviously in the summer, Jason, I'm still tuning in for all my
all systems go. Exactly, all systems go. Jamie Brown, we got in March, we're already doing transfers. How can you not love it? Fantastic. Well, there you go, guys. Great panel for tonight. Listen, we had nearly 500 of you plus watching us live. So thank you very much for your incredible support during this international break. It's been amazing. Thank you. We're back with you on Sunday evening for instant post-match reaction to hopefully Spurs continuing their winning trend in the Premier League. From John, from Jamie, from Ross, myself, guys, keep safe, keep well. And as always, come on, you Spurs.